What's it like to be a conservative inside the media room at the Public Order Emergency Commission? Well, friends, we've got a woman on the inside who's got many secrets to share. I'm Sheila Gunn Reid, and you're watching The Gun Show. This free episode of The Gun Show is brought to you by freedom. In 2022 is your right to disagree with me anytime on anything, in your heart, online, or in the public square. Freedom in 2022 is also your right to live your life however you see fit without hurting me or, for that matter, being bothered by me. But freedom in 2022 is in very real danger, under constant attack by Justin Trudeau through his censorship bills, his attacks on gun rights, his attacks on farmers, and his attacks on peaceful protesters. These people have even tried to denormalize our flag. At Rebel News, we're not afraid to have dangerous discussions that Justin Trudeau, the media, and big tech censors say we're not allowed to have. And we want to have them with you at our upcoming Rebel Live events, first in Toronto, November 19th, and again in Calgary, Saturday, November 26th. I'll be there with dozens of other Rebels and Rebel-adjacent free thinkers, and I hope that you'll join us. Just go to rebelnewslive.com to get your tickets today, but do not sleep on this, because these tickets are going fast. See you soon. My friend and colleague Celine Gallus left behind her life in Calgary a few weeks ago to basically relocate to Ottawa, where she's been reporting on the Public Order Emergency Commission, something we're calling the Trucker Commission here at Rebel News. The commission itself is a fail-safe built into the Emergencies Act to make sure that no tyrannical buffoon ever invokes a civil liberties suspending wartime law on peaceful political dissidents who are embarrassing said buffoon in the nation's capital. But that's, of course, exactly what Justin Trudeau did with the Convoy for Freedom. And now there has to be a full accounting to prove the justification for invoking the law. And frankly, it's not going all that well for the government. You can see and support all of our coverage at truckercommission.com. The commission is teeming with snickering mainstream journalists who are happy to push their paymasters narrative that the bouncy castles and hot tubs of the convoy brought by thousands of truckers who were on the streets of Ottawa for nearly 4 weeks are somehow domestic terrorists. And we know what those journalists are saying officially. It's in their articles. But what are they like when they think nobody's watching? Are they worse? They're often, but not always, snickering and mocking and just plain rude. And we know this because we have Rebel News journalists also at the commission reporting the other side of this story. So Celine Gallus joins me tonight in an interview we recorded yesterday morning from the Rebel News Live satellite studio, the Airbnb, up the road from the commission, to say what it's like in the room with Justin Trudeau's bought and paid for corporate media. Check it out. This free episode of The Gun Show is brought to you by
Adam Sos here for Rebel News. You know, our company is growing quickly, and we'd actually like for your company to grow too. That's why this ad space that I'm speaking through right now is actually available for you to purchase. So instead of people listening to me, they could actually be learning about your company, learning about your business. If this interests you, if this is an opportunity you'd like to capitalize on, send us an email at ads@rebelnews.com.
So joining me now from the Rebel News Satellite HQ in Ottawa is one of my favorite people, one of the hardest working new journalists in Canada, Celine Gallus. Celine, thanks so much for coming on the show. You're on a break from the Public Order Emergency Commission, what we're calling the Trucker Commission. You can see all of Celine's work at truckercommission.com. As I said, we're on a lunch break, so we're going to make this tight and tidy because Celine also still has to eat and then run down the street and get back to the commission. Celine, I wanted to ask you, because you've been in there, this is your second, I think, full week of being inside the commission building. You're with the other journalists. What's the feel in the room with the other journalists? I like being in rooms with other journalists because I feel like my mere presence makes them uncomfortable. What's it like? Are they listening, or are they the kind of people that you can tell where they stand just by watching them and their body language?
Absolutely, you can. It's very apparent. And it was particularly very apparent when the convoy, the representative, let's say the volunteers, there's a lot of stigma against, labeling people as leaders when there was no leaders of this convoy. But primarily when they were protesting, when they were giving their testimonies, people would start laughing in the room, or if someone was especially emotional, then they would just laugh or make catty comments and gossip in the room. Like, it was I was surprised. There's two people from the commission that sit at the back of the room, and I suppose they should be there to kind of monitor that the rules and regulations of the room in terms of keeping volume down, phone volume low, etc., are being met. But no one has said anything. And they definitely know who we are. So you're right. I do like working in that room, because when we walk in, the Rebel crew, everyone kind of just, they do their turns, and I do the hair flip, and then I just take my seat and I start working. So it's very good in that regard. But it is apparent, Sheila. You can definitely see where they stand, and you can see the consistent narrative that they choose to project. There's been some recent, you've seen the CTV articles that have been released, et cetera, and their narrative is now changing because everything in the commission that's coming out points to the fact that these were not misogynist domestic terrorists with this crazy agenda to, hold a insurrection in the capital of Canada. But in fact, they were just a bunch of people fed up with the unjust COVID mandates and restrictions. And now they're starting to be like, yeah, it seems like due to all the testimonies, we probably shouldn't have made fun of them and called them terrorists and followed in the steps of Prime Minister Trudeau. So that's about it from that perspective.
Just to go back a second, you belong in that room more than those other journalists do. Sure, they're the fancy mainstream journalists, but they get all their money from Justin Trudeau. That's how they work. That's how they get paid. But you went on the convoy all the way to Ottawa. You and Mocha followed the convoy. You were on the ground there. You were reporting from inside of the convoy. Some of my favorite footage from the convoy is yours. Alexa's is sort of some of the most shocking, but yours was the most fun. You were dancing in the streets with the convoyers. I guess it's sort of hard not to get caught up in it, but you belong in that room. And secondarily, about your comments about, Justin Trudeau labeling people misogynists and then the mainstream media following along, I would suggest that people snickering and laughing as a Métis grandmother testifies to just the sheer emotional and, quite frankly, physical toll of spending 49 days in jail for being a part of the convoy. Those people are the misogynist racists, aren't they?
Yeah, I think it's pretty apparent. There's like this weird air of confusion in the room where, I'm sitting there and I believe that we're all listening to the same testimonies, that we're all listening to the same truth, the grounded truth that is reality. And yet the differences in the reactions are just, it's honestly appalling. Like, there's two tables that, we haven't claimed by any actual means of labeling it as our tables, but everybody sits primarily in the same place in the room. And you can see, like, we remain silent. Like, there's not much that we talk about, perhaps except for the instance that it is Miller time, of course, because that's the time that we all look forward to. But sitting there and listening to these testimonies, you think, okay, yeah, we're all here. We're listening to the same thing. Everything's occurring at the same time. But all of a sudden, the room will erupt in laughter because they'll start making fun of the people. That, like you premised, was Tamara giving her testimony, this grandma that has stood up and become the face of this movement, so to speak, and not self-proclaimed, but just as people have seen her to be. And it's really gross. For instance, when we had that senior commission council lawyer that passed out the other day, we don't know the details of why, but I was in the room and I actually watched it happen. We had it was someone from mainstream media that ran into the room, and it is absolute no-no at all times. You do not pull your cell phone out and start trying to snap pictures at any time in the actual commission room. He was there with his phone up, trying to get a shot. And immediately the security in the room was like, why, like, what are you doing? Why are you taking photos? I'm not taking photos of the body, nothing. So when we went back into the room, I piped up in front of everyone and I said, hey, just so that we're clear, you're not going to post any of those photos, right? And, he looked a little bit embarrassed and he was like, oh no, like, I would never do that. And I said, well, then why were you trying to take photos? And he just laughed behind his mask. And that was pretty much the end of our interaction. But it just goes to show you that they're like, I didn't even tweet about it, Sheila, because it's so personal. I didn't know what happened. I didn't know why he fell. And it was, my gosh, it was pretty emotional to see everyone in the room just, hone in. It wasn't something that anyone expected to see. And his first instinct was to try and take a photo of it. It's so different from the journalism that we provide to people. It's really shocking that they've been labeled as media. And that's what people have been led to believe is real media for all these years.
It's interesting you bring that up, because when that happened, I thought, okay, well, I better quickly remind everybody that here at Rebel News, we care deeply about medical privacy. And so let's just tweet yes, a lawyer passed out. We don't know why. Frankly, it's none of our business and we're going to leave it alone. I sort of reminded everybody of that, but I didn't need to because you guys were all on the same page, unlike the ghoulish people over at the mainstream media who would trip over their grandma to take a picture of somebody having a medical crisis because they don't care about privacy. They don't respect privacy. And that's really been the story of the last 2 years is some people care about other people having medical privacy. And some people are liberals, I guess.
Yeah. It should just be a game. It's like, pin the liberal in the room. Well, he's going to be the person that is literally taking the steps to probably undermine your rights and freedoms or make fun of you or not take what you say seriously or make a joke out of your ability to actually critically think about what's happening around you because he's so deeply involved in the narrative that he can't tell reality from the one that's been given to him. That's what I think. I think that the government has proposed a reality and people have unknowingly consented to that reality versus actual grounded truth. I mean, there's a lot of stipulation about masks that's going around in Ontario right now. Unlike Alberta, like it's very new to me to have actually so many people in masks, like still people just wearing masks by themselves or in rooms, etc. But here there's a lot of talk about it. And I've seen a lot of stuff on the internet. And on how many boxes of these masks does it say, it will not prevent any respiratory illnesses or diseases. Some of them say will not protect against the spread of COVID-19, etc. And all these people are like, yeah, but masks, they're fantastic. And I just think like, again, it's like being in that room and like trying to understand, like we're all in this reality watching and listening the same thing. If I'm also capable of reading this box, I'm sure other people are as well. So what is the cognitive dissonance between some people that will literally go to the lengths of like screaming in your face, labeling you as a domestic terrorist, a misogynist, and all these other horrible things to actually defend a narrative that openly projects how false it is?
Yeah, you're dealing with people who believe that there's such thing as my truth and your truth instead of just objective reality, right? And so that the reality around them can bend specifically to their own feelings. And that I think has really been the story of the other side of the convoy. Like you see people just like speaking of the horrors of the idling trucks but also simultaneously laughing as Tamara Leach testifies about being arrested, turning herself in, knowing that she could stay in jail for 49 days. That's a joke to them, but honking, my Lord, the phantom honking. Yeah, it's insane. But like as we're recording this on Tuesday on a break from the commission, and all day today so far, it's been RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki who's been testifying. And we've seen how the RCMP apparently were cut out of the intelligence reports that were headed to the PCO, so the Privy Council office. And I think I've been watching, maybe tell me if I'm reading the room wrong, but I think they did that because the RCMP were not going to say what the federal government needed them to say to invoke the Emergencies Act. So they just cut the RCMP out of it because Brenda Lucki, to her credit, and I hate saying that, has said repeatedly, there were other tools left before you had to hit the nuclear button of the Emergencies Act.
Yeah, me and William, we joke about it all the time, that there's just this hot potato that gets thrown around the room, and it's just a process of elimination here. You absolutely heard that correctly. And it's come out in how many texts as well, though, that there's definitely been some sort of, not some sort, I would go on a limb here and just say an absolute breach in the there's a line that's been crossed between the federal government stepping into police jurisdiction. And it's becoming more and more apparent because we're seeing texts from the different cabinet ministers that have, made suggestions to Brenda Lucki. And she said in her testimony that, oh yeah, well, even if they're giving suggestions, it's not the same thing as in any way, shape, or form influencing. Because they're just suggestions at the end of the day. I honestly think that there's something big that's going to happen today. Like there's this undertone of intensity in the room, and Brendan Miller, lawyer counsel for the convoy, he stood up and he made sure that the lawyer that's currently conducting her opening statements and making sure the story is straight, etc., had full time to go entirely through his line of questions and go through all of the evidence that he needed to go through. Because after then it's Tom Curry, and then Brendan Miller is going to go. I seriously think something so substantial is going to happen today. Like everyone's just kind of like buzzing. Definitely, because there's so many cover-ups with this. Like, I don't feel bad. I don't. I think people, you this is the bed that you've made, so now you must lay in it, so to speak. I think that should be the premise that everyone walks with, keeping in mind repercussions for the future, etc. But what's going to happen this afternoon, I think, is going to totally shatter any illusion. And by the way, have you also noticed that she either has the worst memory on this planet, or she just, I don't know, it's selective memory or something, Sheila. But
what is in the drinking water in
someone
Ottawa?
That has basic information shouldn't be in the position that she's in.
Yeah. What's in the drinking water in Ottawa where all the senior officials suddenly under scrutiny can't remember a damn thing? But we did see Justin Trudeau in a phone call readout with Doug Ford, lamenting the fact that they could not pressure the police. Doug Ford, again, pains me to say it, but to his credit, said, I can't pressure the OPP to do what you want them to do. And Trudeau sort of seemed taken aback by that because he does have a history of pressuring law enforcement officials to do what he wants. He did it with his AG, Jody Wilson-Raybould. She said no thanks. She would rather set aside her promising career as a Liberal cabinet minister to do the right thing. She and I probably disagree on 99% of everything, but ethical woman. And Brenda Lucki herself, we've seen that she was pressured to release the models of illegal firearms used in the largest mass shooting in Canadian history for the explicit purpose of pushing ahead Justin Trudeau's gun control agenda. So she has been subject to political pressure from Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau has been putting political pressure on law enforcement officials all over the place. I'm supposed to believe now that he didn't try it. I think maybe he did. And when the fish weren't biting, he just went around them. And that's how he ended up with the Emergencies Act.
Yeah, absolutely. And it shows too that there was an email between Commissioner Carrick and Brenda Lucki where she explicitly said that she did not give any prior notice to Prime Minister Trudeau on the plan that the RCMP, the OPP, and the OPS had come up with in order to open a dialogue or some sort of vein for the protesters and the government to have conversation about negotiations. And that following day was when the Emergencies Act was invoked.
You know what?
Again, we see the same thing. It's crazy.
It sounds like plausible deniability. At first, I thought, okay, well, the RCMP are being cut out of this because they're not going to do what Justin Trudeau wants them to do. So basically, they're law enforcement shopping. They're going to the national security officials and getting their advice instead of going to the RCMP because the RCMP aren't going to do what we asked them to do. But I think now there could, I sound like such a conspiracy theorist. I think Lucky didn't tell the feds about the plan so that the feds could say, we didn't know about the plan. We didn't think there was a plan. So we just went with the EA.
Exactly. Well, really, I mean, I'm pretty sure that that's what everyone in the room is thinking about. So there's no qualms about being labeled as a conspiracy theorist here. It's very apparent. It's very apparent that there has been a huge overstepping from the federal government. And it's not just specific to Brenda Lucky's testimony. We even saw this from both deputy ministers to the actual ministers of transportation in their testimonies yesterday. That was Rob Stewart and Dominic Rashawn, I believe. Yeah. I can't pronounce his last name. But they both said that, they did everything to actually negotiate with their own ministers about doing anything except invoking the Emergencies Act. So it's right there, point blank. It's blatant at this point. And we've really narrowed it down. Like, it's been a long 4 weeks. I feel like I've been in Ottawa for like 6 months. So I'm very eager to get down to the bottom of this, because there's really, all fingers are pointing to the Liberal cabinet ministers and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Yeah, it's really that. And it's their overstepping. And yeah, these people said, yes, I will do what you're telling me to do. But imagine also, being in their positions. You want to keep your job, you want to keep your livelihood. At that time, we were living in this crazy era where you didn't see people's faces. You weren't allowed to go spend time with your friends, your family. Fast forward, and it's almost been a year. We take for granted, I think, a little bit about where we are here right now. I've certainly allowed myself to let go of some of those pressures, but being here and seeing so many people in masks still, it's reminiscent in the worst way possible, I tell you.
There are two Canadas. And you and I live in one, and those people live in another. And it's interesting because all the people with all of the relevant intelligence were saying one thing, and then Justin Trudeau's national security advisors were saying another thing. So OPP, RCMP, CSIS especially, so like the spy agency who had people embedded in the convoy, said, yeah, there's no terrorist threat here. But Justin Trudeau's national security advisor all of a sudden started thinking there was, and then that's when the EA got invoked. But we've heard all along it was for tow trucks. And then now we're hearing it's for some other reason, because the province of Alberta said, no, you could just go actually buy your own tow trucks on Kijiji if you really needed tow trucks. So then they have to pivot and come up with something different. And by the way, Justin Trudeau's national security advisor, that Jody lady, she's the one who said, maybe we should talk about grabbing the kids from the convoy. She's the one behind that. So she's handpicked for the job for exactly those sorts of character flaws, I would say. Celine, I promised I would cut it short because you have to eat and then run down the block to get back into the commission, because we know big things are going to happen today. I want to ask you, what's been the one thing that one fact that came out at the commission that sort of caught you flat-footed or shocked you, or one of the things that you knew, but you were like, I never imagined I would hear them say it. What's the one thing that was like the big light bulb for Celine?
Like out of everyone's testimonies?
Yeah.
One thing, that no one has admitted that the Emergency Act was anything but unnecessary. I thought for sure that there would be people testifying hard to defend that fact. They've defended every other thing possibly imaginable. Even to the point where they declare bouncy castles as being dangerous and absurd and crazy. And I believe it was a former chief of police, Ottawa Police, Peter Slowly, that said that the atmosphere in Ottawa within the first week was akin to a tinderbox waiting to explode. My goodness, I was there then, so I can tell you that it wasn't. So regardless of statements like that, and no matter how many times they can agree, it was or wasn't a threat to national security, no one has said yeah, it was necessary to invoke the Emergencies Act. No one has said it because that's a pretty condemning thing when you're in a room full of people that don't believe it either.
Yeah, there's a lot of people saying it was helpful. It made our jobs easier, but nobody has said we actually needed it. One of those things that the National Security Advisor to Justin Trudeau said was that basically it was a potential for violence on the ground.
Yeah.
With the heavy hand of police enforcement that came down on the convoy in the days after the invocation of the Emergencies Act, there was never even a window broken. There was no riot. No. You would think with hundreds, sometimes thousands of people in the street, if these people were going to be violent in the face of state violence, they would have been, but they weren't because they were there for peace. And I think that's the true test of this, is that CSIS got it right, OPP got it right, RCMP got it right. Who knows what's going on with the OPS? I don't know if those guys can, I'm not sure what they're up to there, but all the other agencies got it right, that there was no violence and no potential for violence, because in the end, there was no violence except at the hands of the state.
Yep. 100% agreed. I can't wait for the end of this. I can't wait to see what happens, really. There's no way that those Liberal cabinet ministers, will be able to come up with any excuses.
Oh,
there's no way. They'll try, but oh my gosh, unless someone grasps for I have actual mental issues, don't lock me up for committing such a great crime against Canadians in this country. I'm not sure what short of that they could have as a plausible excuse for acting like what I think that they were a bunch of monsters for doing those things.
I do too. Scaring parents, locking up Tamara Leach, locking up people for mischief, spreading lies, spreading division, spreading hate. Yeah. Celine, I should let you go. You've got to go. Thank you so much for all your hard work that you're doing there. I know that you've taken weeks away from your family and your normal life to work literally dawn till dusk, later than dusk, frankly, because you're on the live stream to cover the Trucker Commission. But it's just such valuable work. And I know our viewers really appreciate it. They come to us because they know that they are really going to get the other side of the story instead of what the bought and paid for corporate media snickering and laughing and mocking what they provide.
Absolutely. Every minute is worth it, even if it's Ottawa. So happy to provide that.
Even if it's Ottawa. Thanks, Celine. Have a great day.
Okay, you too. Bye.
This free episode of The Gun Show is brought to you by
my mug. I know. It's pretty cool. So is this hoodie I got on, and you could have it on too if you check out our special website at rebelnewsstore.com. That's where you can see Freedom Focus hoodies that we have for you, beanies, cell phone cases, you name it, all while supporting our journalism, where we fight to bring you the other side of the story, as opposed to, being forced by the Trudeau government to fund leftist media out of your taxes. The truth is, without you and your generosity, there is no Rebel News. So again, if you like the reports that we bring you and that we also fight for freedoms in Canada, please consider doing some shopping, picking up some swag at rebelnewsstore.com. We appreciate your support.
Well, we've come to the portion of the show where I welcome your viewer feedback. You see, unlike the mainstream media, who are just so happy to snatch your money from your pocket and never hear from you again, we actually do care about what you think about the work that we're doing here at Rebel News. It's one of the reasons that I give out my email address at the end of every show. It's sheila@rebelnews.com. Put Gun Show Letters in the subject line, GUNN. That way it's easy for me to find, because I do get, I'll be quite honest with you, hundreds of emails every single day. Yes, every single day. But also, don't hesitate to leave a comment on Rumble or even on the censorship platform of YouTube, because sometimes I go looking over there. Now, this week's letter comes to us from Alina Novak, and she actually doesn't have a question or comment about the show, but she's got a question for me as an expert on all things Albertan, and it's one of the things I love to talk about. I love Alberta, and I love telling you how great it is. She says, "Hi, Sheila. I'm in Ontario." Bless your heart. "My husband and I are thinking of moving to Alberta." Well, you know what? Lots of people have moved to Alberta this last little bit, including people who work for Rebel News. A lot of our Calgary team are refugees from Doug Ford's Ontario. Alina says, "Since you were born there, which area would you recommend we move to? I'm thinking of some rural community, small town where I can have my own garden, but not far from a city to come to once a week for groceries, etc. I love nature and hiking and backpacking and canoeing. I'm looking forward to your response. Thank you, Alina." You know, Alina, I feel like you just described exactly where I live. Now, I don't like to tell people exactly where I live, so I'm not going to do that, but you're going to get a range. I live northeast of Edmonton. And it's close enough that if I have to go to Edmonton, I can go to Edmonton and it doesn't take a whole day. But I'm also relatively close to some of the suburban communities that have all the same services that they have in the big city of Edmonton. So I don't actually have to go to Edmonton unless it's for work. In fact, my kid goes to school in one of the suburban communities. It's that close and convenient, but I also live next door to Elk Island Park, which is a large national park where you can hike and backpack and run and canoe and geocache and enjoy nature as God intended it. So, I mean, not only am I a proponent of Alberta, but I love exactly where I live here on the family farm. But I think you would do well to just move anywhere in Alberta where you can find a bargain on a house, where the community seems like a good fit. You know, our friend Chris Sims from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, she recently relocated her family from British Columbia to southern Alberta, and she seems to really be loving it. It doesn't matter what our government tries to do, the people are more free. Your neighbors care about freedom. And we care about not discriminating against our friends and neighbors for their medical choices. As my friend Kian Simone, our chief documentary filmmaker, describes Alberta, he describes us as ungovernable in that we are linked to our communities, linked to our families, but you're not going to tell us what to do. So if that's you, welcome to your new home, Alina. Well, everybody, that's the show for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see everybody back here in the same time, in the same place next weekend. Remember, don't let the government tell you that you've had too much to think.